The backup quarterback for the Buffalo Bills is about as wide open as it could get. To hear Joe Buscaglia write about it, there's no one winning, quote unquote. But that almost seems like it's bad news for Mitch Trubisky. I'm on record as saying they were going to move on from him, mostly because Brandon Beane has a $2 million incentive to not want Mitch Trubisky around. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the AFC East Roundup podcast. I'm your host, Bill season ticket holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. And we are here as most AFC East teams are wrapping up their first week of NFL training camp. There's a lot that comes out of this time period. You know, everyone has their preconceived notions of how camp's supposed to go, what storylines they believe are going to dominate the headlines, or what the makeup of their team is. And then once practices start to get underway, other storylines start to take over and other, narratives start to take shape. And so it's always nice to go around the table and see what's going on in everybody else's backyard as this process gets underway. And not to belabor the point, we want to kick things off with our favorite Dolphins content producer out there, and probably the only one who's willing to talk to us anymore at this point. Alf Arteaga from 3 Yards Per Carry. Alf, first of all, everyone here in Buffalo has been complaining that the practices have been too hot. Now, you're used to Buffalo fans complaining about things being too hot. I know. The jokes write themselves.
Yeah, we have an OSHA complaint still hanging over our heads.
So with that in mind, what has it been like down there in South Florida?
Oh, pleasant. Really pleasant. They're doing availabilities at 8:15 in the morning, and they're running practice at 9 a.m. And for whatever reason, it gets pretty hot, like around 10. Like around 10, you're at 92 degrees. But there's been like this breeze, and all these days have been kind of overcast, and the first 2 days of practice were just rain showers all day. So they've been kind of cool, But the last couple of days, it's after the availability, after the practice, and to do their availability at about 11 a.m., you start to feel that heat. Mm-hmm. And it's a special kind of heat down here at around 11. So I guess they figured out, you know what, if we do practices at 9, we kind of get this little breeze going, and we're kind of all right out here. So, and forget about the media. Like, we like to complain, but they put us in the stands, and we got those big-ass fans. Mm-hmm. Literally, they're called big-ass fans.
Oh, yeah, no, I've seen them. In fact, I keep telling my wife I'm going to buy one for the backyard, so when I'm out there grilling and smoking meat and doing all that stuff, I can do so with a nice breeze. She told me, I showed her the price tag, and her thing was, if you do, I'll be cashing in that life insurance policy.
Yeah, it's really pleasant. Like, I always sit all the way up to the top because you get that high, that by sitting up high, you get that little breeze coming across. But it's not even necessary. I still sit up there because it's a good vantage point. But it's really pleasant to watch practice. So, Chris, it's actually been pretty pleasant.
It's hilarious hearing that they have the same weather temperature-wise that we do. Like, that's a first. Yeah. It's got to be.
It is. Yeah. But, I mean, player-wise, I don't know how players could even remotely begin to complain about any type of heat. Where are you getting most of your players from? The SEC, where it's hot as hell.
That's it. There's so many players in the NFL who, they have to get to the NFL before they ever see snow in their lives. So I think it's good for everybody that we're getting this, fans included, because I feel like some of them need to toughen up. Now, fans is where I want to start with this, and I want to start by saying this. Most outside perspectives, if you're a fan of another team or not a fan, if you're an anti-fan of another team, you're watching social media, you're looking for headlines and papers and, different media outlets as it pertains to the teams that you're kind of watching from afar. And that starts to form your opinion, or at least form the narratives that you're thinking about when you think about a football team. Omar Kelly on the, July 26th, tweeted out, "I'm not trying to rain on anyone's parade, but it just hit me. That was the lightest Dolphins fan base crowd I've seen for day one of training camp, especially on a weekend I can ever remember. There were plenty of empty seats. Keep in mind, I've covered Miami since 2007. I want to start with the question.
So it's his fault is what he's admitting here.
So he's done this to you guys.
Yeah.
As someone who's in the stands yourself,
Yeah.
is there something of a fan lull in terms of where this team's at? Because
Oh, absolutely.
I know,
absolutely.
I know that
Like,
when you guys got Tua and started to really take off, and the hype around this team started to increase, the fan contingent of Dolphins fan contingent got very loud. There was a lot of people in the building around the team, in the stands. To hear that that's thinned out after 4 or 5 years of this, that's somewhat surprising. But should it not be surprising? I don't know. Your take on that?
Well, there's a lot that goes into it, right? Like you had a concerted effort, what seems like a concerted effort by the national media to just, trash this team at every single turn. And that's what they mostly listen to in the off season. So, they've been beaten down all off season to expect less. While for whatever reason, the over under remains the same in Las Vegas for the past 2 years. So Las Vegas is saying they're the same, but everybody else is telling you that they're doomed. So naturally, the fans, are gonna not have as high expectations as they had before. In 2023, I completely agree with that tweet, by the way, by Omar Kelly. In 2023, there wasn't a seat available. Like you had, and people were actually selling seats in the secondary market. Like people were selling practice seats for like $40 and $50 to the point where the team had to crack down at one point. And they created this system where your ticket had to match your account. If not, you had to create an account with the Dolphins, and then your ticket for practice had to match you, because a lot of people were just going in and buying like 10 seats and then selling them for like $40, $50, for practice. Because they are assigned seating. They have assigned seating for practice.
When the Bills started to get good, we used to joke that we were going to start doing To Catch a Predator, except it was going to be us going on Craigslist and going on Facebook and finding all these people who were getting tickets for free and then trying to resell them, and just meeting them in parking lots and just throwing a net over them and then berating them.
Yeah, and people were actually doing this, and I guess they were turning a profit because those stands were just jam packed. But I would say look, there was a pretty good crowd on Wednesday, which is odd because that first opening weekend on a Saturday, like there wasn't a good crowd out there. Like I would say maybe 55-60% full.
Wow.
But on Wednesday, people were trickling in, and it was a little bit bigger crowd. So we shall see. Toward the end of camp, they're going on the road here for 2 weeks, which is odd. But they're going on the road for 2 weeks in the middle of training camp, which is the first time I ever remember. And I've been going to practices from way back. It's the first time I remember a team going on the road for 2 weeks in the preseason. But they're going to Chicago, and then they're going to Detroit for an entire week. So I think they come back home for 1 day in between all of that time. But in fact, let me check. Like that's a good idea to check, right? So I cover the team. I should know these things, right?
So they're
all right. They're leaving on the 6th, and they come back to Miami on the 17th.
To me, that almost makes it worse. So
they're gone for 11 days.
So knowing that their camp is so from at least from the public view is somewhat truncated because of that travel, it almost makes it worse that there's a lighter crowd, which again speaks to maybe the temperature of the fan base. Now, he had another tweet that I found interesting where he basically said, and I don't want to misquote the man, so I'm just going to pull up my handy dandy Twitter bookmarks here. Omar Kelly, 22 hours ago. This season is one O-lineman injury away from being a disaster. Now, do you co-sign that tweet, or can you at least expand on it a little bit? Maybe give us some of what you're seeing, because we know historically the Miami Dolphins have had a real problem with the depth on the offensive line. It's something that's reared its head time and time again, and a lot of the team's struggles and failures have kind of, you could lay them at the altar of what is the makeup of your offensive line every season. So when I see a tweet like that, my ears perk up. I want to know your take on it based on what you've seen in practice so far.
Well, look, they have, and it's looking really good so far. It looks like they've had two pretty good drafts back to back here. If we're just judging by what we see so far in these practices and what we've seen so far in game action that they had last year, Patrick Paul and Chop Robinson, right? That offensive line is looking pretty good. Like the top 5 is looking pretty good. And the interior offensive line, including the depth, especially after they signed Daniel Brunskill. Once they signed Daniel Brunskill, who's a guy that I've been advocating for them to sign since February, okay, who was really good last year as a starting center for the Titans. Like the guy played 700 snaps last year, allowed 7 pressures and no sacks. And he can also play guard. He can play tackle. He's a guy who's played 5,000 snaps for the 49ers and the Titans. He's played in a couple of Super Bowls. And he's been a starter on a couple of those teams. That's pretty damn good depth on the interior offensive line. They have a center who's been taking all the snaps right now with the first team in Andrew Meyer because Aaron Brewer is working back into playing. He should be back at practice probably tomorrow. So they're all going to be present and accounted for. So you have a pretty nice looking group on the interior to back up what is a completely revamped interior offensive line, and a pretty good one in my estimation. Their problem is tackle. Like, I don't like anything that's behind the 2 starting tackles. Behind Patrick Paul and Austin Jackson, I really don't like what they have as far as a swing tackle. Like, that has been a pretty dramatic step down from previous years. Now, they have a young guy,
bad is Larry
Smith,
I would say
who's expected to be that guy, but they're playing him at guard. So for whatever reason, he's playing guard on the second team.
Well,
so Liam Eichenberg is out right now.
I'm sure you miss him.
Are they actually expecting Liam Eichenberg to be a backup tackle?
I'm sure you miss Liam Eichenberg a ton.
So my fear is, and I tweeted about it today, is that Liam Eichenberg is owed $2.2 million in guaranteed money, and Brunskill is owed nothing. And my fear is if there's one last roster spot on the team and it's between those two guys, that they're actually going to cut the effective player in Daniel Brunskill to keep Liam Eichenberg just because he makes $2.2 million guaranteed.
And so that enters into, first of all, it hits on the earlier point of why the fan base might have this malaise as it comes to just the football team in general. The anti-Chris Greer sentiment, I don't think has ever been louder when it comes to the state of the Miami Dolphins. And this is just another example where you, as someone who's watched this team and kind of understands how they operate, can't say with any sort of certainty that, hey, there's a smart decision to be made here in terms of your game day personnel. But because of the mistakes our front office has already made, they might double down on one of those and lose a talented backup player simply because they already made a mistake, and they might compound it. It's like cutting off your nose to spite your face, but they might do it because they've already proven they're capable of those things.
Yeah, and their issue is that they recognize a mistake and then they spam that mistake to fix it, which is a good thing, right? Like last year, like think about it, they're like polar opposites. Last year, they're like, guards don't matter. We're going to start Robert Jones and Liam Eichenberg, and they're going to be just fine. They were an absolute disaster, okay? So what do they say? All right, let's shit can both of those guys. And let's use a high draft pick for Jonas Savaianea to play left guard. And let's spend free agent dollars on a right guard in James Daniel. All right, problem fixed. This year seems to be the cornerback position. They're like, they don't matter. We're going to spend money on the front 7 and on safeties, and we're going to make do on the outside. So I still think that's the sore spot on the team. Like, they need a cornerback. Your defensive coordinator
is going to be running the circle defense. No one's ever heard it. It just has no corners, just none.
Well, everybody keeps saying, they have such a good front 7, to the point where people are writing articles. Do the Dolphins have the best front 7 in football? And yeah, that's fine and dandy. But now you're going to tax that front 7, namely the linebackers and the safety unit, which I kind of do like the safety group. You're going to tax those guys to be covering up for the guys on the outside, and you're essentially handcuffing them. And then now you're hoping that they're 100% healthy as well. So, are you? Can you guarantee me 100% health from the front seven and the safeties? Because if you can, then I guess you could get by with what you got on the outside at corner. If not, you're begging for an issue, and those issues tend to just domino during the season, especially if you take more than one injury.
Oh, for sure.
Especially at linebacker.
So when you think about what you've seen through the first week, there's obviously things to be, every team has something to be optimistic about. Something that they've seen that they say, oh, wow, that's actually like, as you're kind of watching reps, there's maybe a player, maybe a position group that surprised you. And you said, oh, that's nice. I wasn't expecting that. And then there's always one where you go, that's not quite what I thought it would look like. Yikes. And you write that down in your notepad. What would you qualify as your picks for each of those categories so far?
Well, number one is the offensive line. Like, it's pretty optimistic, especially with that left side. And, the right side has established players, but that left side with Jonas Savaiinaea and Patrick Paul, it's looking pretty good so far. And one thing you notice right away is that one guy's 340 pounds and the other one's 335 pounds, right?
So it's just a wall of humanity.
Yeah, so they're pretty big and mobile, right? Because you look at Patrick Paul and you're like, wow, how is this guy fitting 340 pounds on his frame? And then you realize, oh, he's 6'8", almost 6'9", And Jonas Savaiinaea can move for a guy so big. So that's the reason for optimism. The other reason for optimism is the defensive tackles. Kenneth Grant, like, you could just tell, like, this guy's going to be a player. I don't know if he's going to be as effective in year one. Like, if I had to bet on a rookie of the year on the Dolphins, it's going to be Jonas Savaiinaea. Like, he looks pretty good. Mm-hmm. Like, he's going to battle with Zach Sealer every day in camp. And Zach Sealer's not a guy who's going to let up, all right? Mm-hmm. He's going to bring 100% every single snap. And by the way, he's getting an extension. So that's well overdue. The defensive tackles, Jordan Phillips is going to be a nice one at 0. And Zeke Biggers is a guy who's gotten high marks so far from the coaching staff. So, I mean, those are the guys that I'm pretty optimistic about.
With the last name like
tackles and the offensive line.
With the last name like Biggers, it would just be the coolest thing in the world if you're an awesome nose tackle. It would just be the coolest thing in the world.
Well, he's also 6'5", 320 pounds, right? Yeah. So,
the things that you've seen that have made you kind of bite on your pen a little bit and go, I don't like that. What are we looking at?
Well, we're gonna at this point. Thank God we're not playing a game on Sunday, because if we were playing a game on Sunday, we'll be the only team in the history of football that would have a rotation of about 6 cornerbacks playing 2 spots. Right? It seems like of the 3 cornerback spots, the only guy that has, and this is to no fault of their own, except they kind of did ignore it in free agency early on until later on they pick up Jack Jones and Mike Hilton. The only guy who's really solidified a spot is Mike Hilton. He's probably going to be the nickel, but that's due to Kader Kohu being injured, and Kader Kohu is now out for the season. And those that have followed the team know that this is a guy that was really good the second half of the season last year. And if you told me he was going to be a top 5 nickel in the league this year, I would believe you. And with the upsides, considering he's so young, to be possibly the best nickel in all of football. So that's the unit that's been shaky. And if I had to pick another unit, it's the tight ends. Like, first of all, Darren Waller, besides, running around with a weight vest and standing next to Stephen Ross, having a long conversation, we haven't seen him yet. Mike McDaniel keeps threatening us with his appearance, but we haven't seen him in uniform yet. He says he has to get into football shape, which
because he came off the couch. He was in the studio remixing things.
If you see what he looks like, you're like, oh, okay. What I mean by football shape is that he has to gain about 15 pounds.
Yeah.
Because he's like kind of shredded, and I'm like, I don't think you want a guy who's supposed to be 6'6", 250 to be shredded. You know what I mean?
No,
because that makes you 6'6", 225 pounds. So another unit that's loaded, and I would expect for them to trade a guy from that unit to get a cornerback, and that's the wide receiver group. Like, they're gonna legitimately cut an NFL player from that group. Like, they're pretty stacked at wide receiver, which is something that they haven't been before. Like, they have the top 2 guys, and they've had the top 2 guys for 3 years now, but they've never really had a lot of talent behind those guys. with Westbrook Akine and Malik Washington, they're pretty loaded there. And they have a bunch of young guys in Taj Washington, Theo Weiss. That's another thing. All the guys behind the top guys are like giant. They're all 6'3", 220 pounds. Like, they're going to cut one of those guys. My guess is that, maybe a Taj Washington is on the bubble or a Monterey Baldwin. Both guys run 4.3s. So that's another unit that's been pretty exciting to watch.
And then in terms of, typically I'm asking about a player, but there's two things I want to ask you about for this as we kind of run through this segment tonight for every team. I've been asking about a player who, like, you've been impressed by in terms of their individual position battle, but I feel like for the Dolphins, if I'm going to ask about an individual player, I care more about the idea that Rasul Douglas, you guys did the thing that you said. You've been prognosticating it every time we've had you on the show, saying, okay, Rasul Douglas, the Dolphins want him. They're going to make him a contract offer. It'll get done at some point. Knowing how dire the cornerback situation is, it sounds like he shot down the offers that have been made to him by Miami. What's your take on that and what that says about where the Dolphins are right now?
Well, the Dolphins evidently will stick to their guns in the face of calamity, right? Because Rasul Douglas had 2 visits here, okay, and a workout. And they revisited contracts twice, and he turned them down the second time. My guess is that they offered him something close to the minimum with a bunch of incentives. And he's like, no, I'm a guy who played for $8 million last year. I'm not going down there for $3 million. I'm just not going to do it. And then they signed 2 guys for $3 million, and Mike Hilton and Jack Jones. So they said, all right, we can't get Rasul Douglas. Let's get 2 guys for what we offered Rasul Douglas. In my opinion, it's time to bend a little bit. There's a piggy bank they could open up if they extend Zach Sealer, and it looks like they're going to extend Zach Sealer. So you open up that piggy bank. I say just whatever savings you get, offer it to Rasul Douglas and get it done. There's a reason he hasn't signed a contract yet. It's probably because he's looking at it. He's like, man, has it come to this where it's the second week of training camp and I'm still not on a team and people are offering me minimum contracts? So, yeah, I think it's time to maybe not panic, but, be alert.
Maybe take the guy out to dinner, buy him a really nice steak and say, look, man, we're trying.
Because if you bring him in, now you're not hoping for 2 young guys to emerge. You're really just hoping for one guy. One young guy to emerge. As of right now, you got 5 guys vying for 2 spots.
And then as we talk about names in the news, you're talking about Zach Sealer's contract extension being the thing that you guys can do to buy some more cap space and go out there and make a competitive offer. And that stands throughout the course of training camp. So when cutdown day comes, if there's a player out there who hits the market either because of age or just a rookie takes a job, a team's trying to shed cap and future guarantees and just decides to get out from underneath somebody, the Dolphins could have some leverage in negotiating with someone like that if they were to restructure a deal for Zach Sealer and open up some more space. How good does it feel to know that when it came time to prioritize a defensive lineman all those years ago, the Dolphins picked Zach Sealer instead of Christian Wilkins? How good does it feel today in hindsight?
And look, man, they were this close to buying it, okay? Because a year prior, they were talking in the range of 18 to 20 per year. And Christian Wilkins shot down all those offers and was like, nope, I could get more in the open market. And the Dolphins made a last-ditch effort at somewhere around, although these are all rumors, you know what I mean? Around $21 million a year. And he said, nope, I could get more. And then the Dolphins said, okay, we're extending Zach Sealer. Because you remember, both of them were free agents at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So they decided, okay, we're extending Zach Sealer. And they gave Zach Sealer a 4-year deal at what is roughly around $12 million, which that contract has aged like wine. Although if you're Zach Sealer's wife, it's aged putridly. Like, can you imagine being Zach Sealer going home every day and seeing all these defensive tackles getting $25 million a year, and your guy is making half?
Yeah.
And he's the only defensive tackle with double-digit sacks 2 years in a row.
It's a tough one. It is tough.
Wilkins goes away for $26 million a year, and it has not, well, $26 million a year, $65 million guaranteed, and he played 5 games. Somebody on Twitter broke it down by snap. And what Wilkins has banked is the equivalent of something like $820,000 a snap.
That's awesome.
From the Raiders. Like, that's a fireable offense. Yeah. And, well, the Raiders did fire everybody that fire the guy that gave him the contract, right? So
it is funny when you see, like, everyone freaks out about free agency, and that's why I love moments like this, where you can look back and go, for all the things Chris Greer's done wrong, and I'm not defending the man, he's gotten a couple right. There's been a couple things in here, and you can point to a contract situation like that and say, well, he played that one well. I'm the Dolphins. I haven't been shy about this. I feel like the Dolphins are the team in the NFL who are probably up there with maybe the Cowboys in terms of their ability to underperform their Vegas odds this year. Throughout training camp, have you noticed any significant, are you so confident that this season, throughout 1 week, you haven't seen anything significant, any significant cracks in the foundation of this thing that show you that this season could come off the rails? Omar Kelly's doom and gloom about the offensive line and what a disaster this is, which takes you back to all the years that Tua was just under siege and it destroyed the offense, which was supposed to be the thing that carried the team. A week in, things are still going pretty well, by and large.
Yeah, if Tua's healthy, this is going to be a playoff team, and they'll win 10 or something like that. They'll be right behind the Buffalo Bills, where they've been for 4 years now. One thing about Vegas odds is they're over-under their win total. The Dolphins have gone over 5 out of the last 6 years. The only year that didn't go over was last year when they had a win total of 8.5 and they won 8, but their quarterback missed 6.5 games. And they didn't have their 2 edge rushers for the entire season. Bradley Chubb didn't play a snap, and Jalen Phillips played 2 games. So I think they're a safe bet if Tua is healthy to be over their win total of 8.5. And yeah, they've been over. And for whatever reason, I looked it up, like historically, even when they're bad, they outperform their win total. So, and I have a theory about that. I think it's all the New York bettors, bunch of Jet fans, especially Jet fans, because the Jets are the opposite. The Jets have gone under 5 out of the last 6 seasons.
That's a hilarious statistic. I can't wait to see if it continues on into this season. I'm literally going to go in and make a note right now on my laptop to come back here and check.
Well, both teams are at the same. They're 8.5. Both are at 8.5, and the Bills are 10.5, I believe. Which is a tight number because you never know. You take a couple of injuries and everybody gets huddled together, and 10 wins the division. So that's a rough number to bet on the over. But yeah, Dolphins, and I believe all 3 teams. I think the Patriots are 7.5. So the Patriots are lower than the Jets and Dolphins.
God. Well, it'll be interesting to see how the rest of camp unfolds for the Dolphins, especially as they hit the road. We obviously will follow up again. We'll touch base. We'll get more of your insight from the sidelines of training camp. But until then, where can everybody go and get it for themselves? As you're very active on social media this time of year, obviously your own content creation machine is churning away. Where can everybody find it?
Well, if you want to listen to our camp reports, I do one daily. So you can check that out on our feed. And, of course, we have our podcast, 3 Yards Per Carry. And if you want to listen to 3 Yards Per Carry, just look it up online. We're essentially anywhere you get your podcasts, you just find it. It's the number 3 Yards Per Carry. You want to follow our Twitter account, it's at the number 3 Yards Per Carry as well.
And so pivoting away from the Dolphins, we kind of close this segment out talking about teams that have underwhelmed in terms of the Vegas odds every single year. It's weird hearing that the Jets have underperformed for the 5 of the last 6 of the last 7. Hopefully this is the year that turns around for them, because I feel like the bar is set adequately for them. But to help us kind of parse through what's going on with them early on in the training camp process, Antwan Staley from the New York Daily News. Antwan, I'm so happy that you had a few minutes to jump on with us tonight. First of all, let's talk about AG. Can we do that? Like, I'll say this. I never liked Robert Saleh. And I'll tell you why. As an outsider, I felt like every time he got to the podium, he would talk the way that I thought people wrote the character Dominic Toretto in the Fast and the Furious series. It was like a bunch of guys, Hollywood writers who weren't tough guys, sitting around in a room going, how would a tough guy talk? And I feel like a lot of times when Robert Saleh would speak, it's like he wants to be a hard-nosed football coach. So he's saying things that he thinks a hard-nosed football coach would say. And yet it sounds like it just doesn't work. It doesn't fit. Meanwhile, Aaron Glenn, I mean, I've been hate watching from a distance because I don't love the Jets. And I wanted to see, I'm like, okay, they've got a rookie first-time head coach. How poorly can this go? And I find myself rooting for the guy just based on his press conferences. What has the first week of camp in the early part of this season been like with Aaron Glenn versus season pass?
I think even going back to OTAs and minicamp, I mean, he's been a guy that's just, hard-nosed guy. He definitely very forthcoming with injuries, which is definitely different than Robert Saleh was. And I think he's just being authentically himself. I mean, I think sometimes when you get in this position of being a, CEO of an organization, I guess it's kind of basically what you are. You just feel like you have to act like somebody that's, you're not. And I think some of these coaches do that. But I think Aaron Glenn, what got him in this position was being himself, and, what's going to keep him in this position other than, obviously wins and losses, is definitely going to be, being himself. And I think he's definitely doing that early on. And I think the players see that. And I think that's why they're gravitating towards him. I think that's why the players are really buying what he's selling, at least early on. Like, it remains to be seen how many wins they're going to have. Like, I know, I've heard people say from 3 to 4 to anywhere to like 9. I'm not, on either side of the fence. I'm kind of right in the middle, probably like 6 or 7 wins, but they definitely have a tough schedule to start out the season. So no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But I feel like if they can navigate that, then, the early to late season schedule is a little bit more forgiving, and then they can pick up a few wins there.
It's one of these things, and it's fascinating to me because, like, Glenn has been blunt, and he's been, and he's made, he's had clips of his press conferences go semi-viral because he's blunt. But unlike the Rex Ryan style of being blunt, which unfortunately both the Jets fan base and the Bills fan base has both had to endure, there's no showmanship involved. It's just a guy who's telling you exactly what he thinks. And he's maybe not being completely transparent. He's not saying anything crazy, not talking out of school, but what he is doing is he's being very straightforward, like talking about Will McDonald. And he's like, people are like, oh no, he looks really great. Well, what do you guys have been doing differently with him? He's like, it's coaching. We've coached him. That's what we're doing. He wasn't getting coached before, and now we're coaching.
Well, yeah, I mean, he didn't say it exactly like that, but
Yeah.
that's kind of, that's exactly what they meant. I mean, the thing about Will McDonald is, like, he came in, it's very raw coming in out of Iowa State. And then the Jets, I mean, he was really a luxury piece at the time. I mean, they had pass rushers, they had John Franklin Myers, they had Jermaine Johnson, they had drafted just a year earlier. So they really didn't need him at all. And they also had Bryce Huff at the time, who was a double-digit sack guy for him, too. And then, obviously, over time, and then last year, they really needed him because Hassan Reddick held out. They really didn't have any other pass rush. Jermaine Johnson also, tore his Achilles week 2. So they really needed him. And now all of a sudden, Will McDonald goes into this season, much bigger than what he was a year ago. And he's been dominant, in terms of training camp. I think he's the guy that I think a lot of people thought he would be coming out of Iowa State eventually. I know for a fact a few teams wanted to move up to potentially take him in the first round back in 23. And, this is what they were talking about, just somebody that can, not only that's very fast and, has that speed element, but now, he has the power element too. But, yeah, I mean, a lot of the players have been talking about just the differences between, Robert Saleh and also Aaron Glenn, just kind of, subtle shots, not necessarily directed at Saleh. It's just the fact that everything was just so chaotic last year that, you can't help but notice the difference in, the team.
Well, and that happens because the Buffalo Bills, the way we ended up with Rex Ryan is so weird. Our Doug Marrone took us to a 9-win season, which was our first in forever.
Yes.
And then there was
I remember this.
And then there was a clause in his contract that said if the team got sold and there was a new owner, he could trigger an out in his contract with no consequence. Yeah. And so when the Bills were bought by Terry Pagula, Doug Marrone pulled the chute and bailed out, thinking that he had the Jets head coaching job already wrapped up. And so then we hired Rex Ryan, and he ended up as like the assistant offensive line coach in Jacksonville. And
eventually the interim coach but yes.
Yeah. And so what ended up happening, though, throughout that transition is we got to experience like, okay, now we're stuck. An owner who's a first-time owner and says, okay, who's the first guy who surprises me? And it's Rex Ryan. And he's all flash and no substance, but he went with them because of the flash. And from the transition from Rex Ryan to Sean McDermott, what you saw was there was no showmanship. It was just very blunt. Very kind of not, he didn't go over the top in making his points, but he made them. He was very direct. He was very transparent. And they started jettisoning players they thought were problems. And they started paring the roster down to a bunch of guys who we as fans looked at and said, these guys are never going to win a game. They're tanking on purpose for the first overall pick. And then he got that team to play so hard that they made the playoffs with guys who almost 2 seasons later weren't even in the NFL anymore.
Oh, I remember I was there the night they made the playoffs. They broke the streak. I was there.
Yeah, you were there in Miami. That's right. You were covering them.
Yeah, I was covering the Dolphins at the time. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody expected much from McDermott back then. I mean, he came from, Ron Rivera's coaching tree, and everybody just thought, I mean, obviously the 2015 team, everybody kind of look at, but, I don't think anybody expected instant results like that to come in and make the playoffs, especially with that team with, Tyrod Taylor there. So, yeah, it was wild, the fact that they even made the playoffs that year. And then, of course, they put the possession position, get Josh Allen next year. They kind of struggled there, but, you can kind of see signs of them getting better and better. At least I did, like in 18, because I think that's kind of, what you want to see out of the Jets too. I mean, Bills wasn't good at first, but then they, late on in the season, and I said it back then, I was like, I didn't think the Bills were going to make the playoffs in 19, but I was like, you can kind of see them getting better. Just it might not be result in wins and losses all per se, but the team was just playing much better to the point where the end of the season they just blew out the Dolphins the last game of the season, and they kind of propelled them, I think, to what was the bigger things to come in 19 and beyond.
And that's the thing that I look at when I think about Aaron Glenn and the ripple effect of this, and that's why it's so interesting to me. Because you've got a guy who could have that McDermott-esque impact. A guy who's just going to come in as a former football player who says, look, I get what it is to be back here. I've had bad coaches. I've had good coaches. I understand what it is, and now I'm here and I get my crack at it. So I'm going to try to do it the way I think to do it best. I'm going to have meetings the way I want to have them. We're going to meet with people the way I think we should be meeting with them. Aaron Rodgers certainly felt a certain kind of way about that. But maybe that's a good thing. Right? Like maybe that's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I bet you they would probably do that differently than the way that it went down. They probably should have handled it. It's different ways they could have handled it. They probably didn't have to exactly fly him out all the way from Malibu to New Jersey, although I know why they did. Just to, because you're firing somebody essentially. You want to do that in person. So I get that.
I mean, Antwan, I'm a guy who had to drive to Rhode Island to find out my girlfriend was cheating on me because she didn't want to do it over text message.
See, that's what I was like. See, in that sense, I'd be like, just save me the drive. Just save me the drive. Like, just tell me now. Like, so I only have to get in the car. I can go to the bar and get some drinks or whatever. Like, I'm not trying to drive. Yeah.
Exactly.
Especially for you, Buffalo to Rhode Island. Like, how long is that?
It was actually south of Syracuse. I was in college at the time, and she was like, hey, come up and see me. Oh, God. So the idea is they're running what feels like a different thing that I've seen from the Jets in a very long time. And
and I can tell you this, too. Like, they're being physical. Like, they're doing live tackling in practice. Like, hardly any team does that. I think the Lions do it. Maybe, one of the
sure, the Lions do it.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you the Dan Campbell story. When Dan Campbell took over the interim coach of Miami for Joe Philbin at the time, this is 10 years ago almost now. The first day, they had the players were out there doing the Oklahoma drill because he's just trying to change the tone of the organization, basically going from a team that was very soft with Joe Fielding.
I'll make you tough.
That was very tough, because you have to remember who those guys played under. They played under Bill Parcells. Like Aaron Glenn also played under Bill Belichick too, a little bit as well as his defensive coordinator. So you have to know like their background. And also Glenn, he was drafted by Pete Carroll. So he's been around really tremendous coaches and seen it done a lot of different ways. And all those coaches are about toughness, like trying to be physical at the line of scrimmage, all three of them. And that's what you want to see. That's what you see out of Dan Campbell. That's what you see out of Aaron Glenn. It's really more or less run like a college. I used to cover college football. I think their practices are more run like college football, but it should be because they have a lot of young players. And then they're teaching them elementary tackling skills, which, again, like you would think you're in the NFL, you don't need it, but sometimes you do, because a lot of these guys have not been taught the proper way to do it. And also, you don't know what they were taught in college. They might have been taught very bad habits. They might have been taught very good habits in college, but you're getting these guys in NFL, and the teaching you get at Alabama is going to be different than Vanderbilt or, vice versa or whatever the case may be. So you don't know where these guys are. So I think it's important to be able to do that. And he's not worried about the injuries because he knows when injuries are going to come. Hell, the Lions had like 13 defensive players on IR last year, and they still, didn't miss a beat and won 15 games. So, yeah, I like the way he's style of doing it. It'll be interesting to see like just how everything kind of translates. But, defensively, I think they're going to be good. I think from an offensive standpoint, I'm still a little bit worried because they've had some struggles there, especially Justin Fields lately.
Well, and that was going to be my question. What in terms of most encouraging sign and then your most concerning dynamic? Those two things.
Well, I'll start with the concerning thing. I think the offense, like, not only just Fields there because, his accuracy going to be is what it is. Like,
yes,
you can improve accuracy because you've seen it. Josh Allen has improved his accuracy, but it takes a lot to do that.
Josh Allen had to go seek out, not just like, it wasn't inside the building. He went to a clinic where they map your throwing motion. And he was on some podcast somewhere where he admitted he went last. They were like, they show you what muscles you're firing when and how broken you're, how to fix your mechanics. And he ended up going last in the critique, but you're in a room full of people. And he said it was really embarrassing because they looked at him and said, how are you in the NFL? Everything about the way you throw the football is wrong. Everything about how you're doing this is terrible.
It wasn't wrong. I mean, yeah, he was very uneven and inaccurate at times. Yeah. Too, like at least the first part of his career. And then, a lot of people just thought, well, he got Stephon Diggs. Like that was the big reason, but no, it had nothing to do with it. Like
he put the work in.
That he did. So you can improve accuracy. It just takes a lot to do it. And, I think for Fields, he's never going to be a guy that's probably super accurate, but you just want him to be able to, if he can stay around the 65, 66% completion percentage, then I think that would be good. But that was very limited work for the Steelers last year. And also there was a reason why they went back to Russell Wilson when they were 4-2, as opposed to just staying with Justin Fields, if you remember. So, and that worries me. And also the lack of the receiving core. The receiving core also worries me too, because you got Garrett, who's really good. And then you really don't have anybody else to threaten you as far as the receivers. And I feel like teams are just going to double team Garrett the whole time.
Malachi Corley was a player who people were like, he didn't get enough run. Do you think is he showing well this? No, God. See?
No, he didn't. He was hurt in OTAs and mandatory minicamp. Like he was behind the 8 ball. He might not even make the team.
Wow.
Like, that's the whole thing. Yeah. Like he was a 3rd round pick. And remember the Jets traded up to get him. Mm-hmm. And now he might not even make the team at all because he's so far behind the 8 ball. And you have to remember, this regime didn't take him.
Nope.
So they have no ties to him whatsoever. So he's going to have to show a lot in preseason. But right now, I would say he's probably on the outside looking in right now.
Going into week 2, what's the thing that you're focused on? Like, what's the number one thing as you're showing up to practices, critiquing the team? Where are your eyes and what are you most focused on in week 2, looking ahead to the first preseason game?
And can they get anything done offensively? I think the days that they've been in the past, like offensive really struggled. I think the defense has really played really well. I mean, Justin Fields today, he threw an interception. He almost threw 2 more after that too as well. So that's what I'm paying attention to. Also the offensive line too. I think the offensive line they've invested a lot of money in the offensive line, whether it be the draft or just, paying people. And I think they need a solid running game. Like, they need a team that's going to rely heavily on running the football. If they can't run the football, now you're relying on Justin Fields to drop back the ball in third and long situations. It's not necessarily a recipe for success too, as well. So, yeah, I think those are the two things I'm looking at towards as they head the first preseason game against Green Bay. And, that's what I definitely want to see, the next, 5 days of practice that I believe they have.
Man, well, I'll tell you what, it's fun watching your Twitter feed and just watching what you're doing. Like, while you're at there, you're reporting about camp, reading everything you have. Where can everybody find your work, and where can they follow you on social media?
Find my work at nydailynews.com, and then you can just find my work at Antwan Staley, my name, just all social media platforms.
Alf Arteaga, Antwan Staley. 3 yards per carry in the New York Daily News. No one for the Patriots because they're not good enough in the content creation community game.
Well, it's interesting. We've developed a lot of relationships with a lot of people, and the Patriots are one where it's constantly in flux. We've had some people over the years. Christian Simonelli's out there, but this is too early in the day for him now that he's dad. There's just a lot of stuff up in the air, and obviously Mark Schofield, is he ever going to come back? I feel like that meme where it's Wolverine and he's laying on a bed looking at a photo, he's holding a photo.
Yes.
And he just kind of touches like, oh man, I miss that. For me, it's just that with Mark Schofield's face in it.
Yeah.
I miss that guy. He's not on social media anymore.
But for Schofield, it's that with a picture of Mike Vrabel as head coach. Oh, the glory days. The glory days. You can bring them back as a coach. Glory days.
I don't know. I don't know if anybody can. I mean, if we want to talk about what's happening on the Patriots side of the fence, again, most of our ideas of what's happening with teams outside of our own are shaped by the media. And honestly, if somebody out there knows of Patriots content producers, I feel like just in our travels and social media, I come across content creators for the Dolphins against my will. I end up stumbling across people who are Jets fans and Jets podcasters without trying. Chris, do you ever see anything on social media about the Patriots anymore?
No.
Nobody, I don't know what Patriots Twitter looks like. I don't get dragged into it the way I do these other teams. And I'm petty. I'll never forget what that 20-year run was like for me. And I'll never stop rooting against the success of that franchise.
Maybe what we got to do is go after, instead of focusing on podcasting, how about like a writer for the Patriots? Is there someone at Pat's Pulpit? You should research that.
We're going to have to. Guys, it's tough this time of year. And it's tough in general when it comes to the New England Patriots these days. With that in mind, I've done a little bit of research on The Athletic and just read some headlines about what's going on over there. And it's about what you might expect. Chris, if you want to do me a favor, go ahead and pull up the Our Lads page for the New England Patriots. Because one of the things that I guess their staff over there, Chad Graff, one of the writers for The Athletic who covers the New England Patriots, they've kind of come to the conclusion that this offense is up and down and probably will just be that. Now, how much of that is a byproduct of, you don't know what you have on the offensive line yet? It's a Mike Vrabel-led team. You expect that the backbone of it's going to be the rushing attack, but also this is a football team that shuffled almost its entire offensive line from top to bottom. Cole Strange, who some could argue probably is a replacement level player in the NFL, is one of the, him and Michael Wenwu are the two holdovers from last year and seasons prior. Left tackle, right tackle, swing tackle, center, backup center. All of these positions are going to be manned by people who have never played a game in a Patriots uniform. So when people are talking about how, the offense is up and down and this is difficult, coach, talent on hand, and just the philosophy mix there, what you did in the draft and free agency from a GM perspective. Everything points to this being a run-first football team, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I would expect that to be because it's Vrabel's deal. Plus, you look at his first draft in New England, Will Campbell and Jared Wilson, first and third round. Vrabel is going to do what we did in 2018 with Josh Allen. You're going to build the trenches. Mm-hmm. That's his style. Build the line, run the ball, and then work in Drake May. Hopefully he's going to be better this year.
So I guess this is one of those things where when we talked with Alf earlier about the state of their offensive line and how, some of the media might make some hyperbolic statements about it. You can look at the Patriots and go, if their offensive line is up and down and the offense isn't producing as evenly as you'd like, some of that's probably a byproduct of the fact that all of these guys have to figure out how to play together for the first time in their entire careers. You've got two guards who have never played with the center or tackle on either side of them. That's not a recipe for early success, but that doesn't mean that it can't work. And knowing how much I hate that franchise, it kills me to have to defend them a little bit. I do think that one of the things that they've done to themselves is the wide receiver position. And that's where, you hear reports that Demario Douglas is firmly entrenched as the Patriots' second best wide receiver through 1 week of camp. The fact that you're going into this season saying to yourself, I don't know who wide receiver 2 is. And your wide receiver 1 is a guy off an ACL tear. Chris, the ceiling has to be lower than any other team in the division and maybe any other team in the AFC right now in terms of what you've established you have at wide receiver. Is that a crazy statement to make?
No, that seems to be about right.
I mean, Mac Hollins is a guy they paid, $8 million to?
To block when they run the ball? Because he's good at that?
Well, he hasn't practiced yet. He still has not practiced in a Patriots uniform. And I saw a snarky tweet. We talk about Patriots Twitter. So far, I've seen one tweet all offseason, and it was that basically bemoaning the fact that Mac Hollins is making videos on TikTok about the existence of aliens instead of practicing for the New England Patriots. First of all, that's something that fits the bill for Mac Hollins, doesn't it?
Yes.
Like, you would expect him to be doing things like that. You just would also hope he's all, playing football for your team. Kyle Williams is a guy that Bills fans were super high on, really liked the idea of, and then he went in the third round to the New England Patriots. I mean, maybe he's got upside, but right now he's being outplayed by Demario Douglas, which I don't know what he is. 6th round pick from a couple of years ago. I don't know, Chris. It's just, I want to hate on this football team, but also, what did you expect? I called the Dolphins one of the teams that could probably underperform their win-loss total. I feel like the expectation for the Patriots is already so low. Anything that they get out of this group on offense would be considered a win after what we've seen from the last year or two from them, right?
Yeah.
I do think Travion Henderson, if I'm watching Patriots tweets, from reading camp reports for anything, it's mostly because I have a sneaking suspicion that, like in fantasy football, if you're in a dynasty league, Travion Henderson might be a steal in a dynasty format where you can pick him up relatively late in some rookie drafts or even in standard draft. His cost is probably pretty minimal. And you have the upside of a potential starter with the long-term potential under a coach who loves to run the hell out of the football and an offensive line that they just paid a lot of money to and spent a lot of draft capital to try to fix. This could be a thing that has legs for a while. So I'm selfishly watching that when it comes to Patriots camp. And then on the defensive side of the ball, as we talked about in the live show, Christian Gonzalez injury, who knows where that goes. This is a team that's going to have to run the ball and play defense. And Chris, if you scroll down there for me, if their base is going to be a 3-3 defense and then they're going to fill in around it, I just feel like this is tough because if you look at their Chris safeties, let's start there. Safeties, Kyle Duggar, Jabril Peppers. I think if you get in the time machine and go back 3 years ago, you could find people who were excited about that concept. The fact that those are your starting safeties right now, it's somewhat concerning. And they didn't really add anything of note behind that. I think the guy who's probably of most note is Brendan Schooler, who, I don't know what that's worth, Chris. If you want to scroll down, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that Schooler, Travion Henderson right now is penciled as a kick returner. He doesn't play special teams. Marcus Epps, who I thought was, Chris, wasn't he an actor?
Maybe.
Epps. The one story, though, that does interest me, they paid a lot of money for Harold Landry. Paid a lot of money for Milton Williams. Because, again, they know they're going to have to play defense and run the football. When you look at pass rushers, it's Harold Landry, and then most of the guys that they added around that are, I don't know, Robert Spillane, he's a tackle machine. Okay, great. You're going to get tackles inside the box, kind of like Paul Posluszny used to. Handful of yards off the line of scrimmage. You've got Braden Swinson, a pass rusher that I liked, but nobody else did as he fell all the way to the 5th round. Joshua Farmer, a big physical defensive tackle in the 4th round. You've got Milton Wood. You've got a stout interior defensive line. And you've got Keon White, 2nd round pick from 2023, who hasn't really made a name for himself in the NFL yet, so I don't know that he ever will. Clavion Chasen, a player drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars who just hasn't really found a home in the NFL. Chris, if you want to give it a goog, where was he drafted? Can you verify that for me?
Who's this?
Clavion Chasen. So go scroll down. In fact, you might even be able to click it, and it'll give you his history there because we're on Hourly. It's one of the best websites to use this. Go up right there. Of course, your next job is waiting for you, Chris. They know you. They know the
Jacksonville, Carolina, Las Vegas. Now he's with New England. A lot of practice squads. So, by all accounts, he's flashing in training camp. And they say, oh no, Clavion Chasen may be the player on the defense who's standing out the most. I'd almost take that as something concerning, wouldn't you? Yes.
I would be concerned that a guy who's bounced around the NFL for most of his career is all of a sudden the guy who's turning heads. That means that Anthony Jennings, the guy slotted in on the depth chart ahead of him, isn't probably doing anything of note. It probably means that there isn't anybody else in terms of interior linemen who are really showing up. I don't know. I think that it's a problem. I think that they have real issues. And, I will say that reading through everything over at The Athletic and over at Pat's Pulpit, the thing I keep seeing over and over again is that Drake May is cemented himself as a quarterback capable of finishing in the top 15 this year in the NFL. And I laugh because, Chris, for that to happen, it would mean that he'd have to be a high-volume passer, first of all. With that depth chart in that wide receiver room, do you see a world where that's feasible?
No.
If the team can't play defense at a high level, which it did not last year, what is to stop teams from just airing it out and forcing them to become a pass-first offense that skews directly away from their strengths and actually puts them in a precarious situation?
Yeah, if New England gets down early and it ends up having to chase the game and pass the ball, it's not going to look good. I mean, so they're going to have to win games in the first quarter.
Look at the secondary. We make fun of the Miami Dolphins for the state of their secondary, but when you look at the defensive backs that the Patriots have, you've got Marcus Jones, okay, Christian Gonzalez, a 7th round rookie slotted in as your right cornerback, Kobe Minor. Isaiah Bolden is your nickelback. Carlton Davis is your left guard. Like, that's a get for them in free agency. Outside of that, former, I think, 7th round draft pick of the Bills, Alex Austin. There's no depth in this secondary really at all that's proven. And so in that way, it's crazy to think that this is a team. Elf made a comment like, oh, the front seven's going to have to do everything if our secondary. I don't think the Patriots are in that different of a boat, and I don't think that their front seven's as proven as the Miami Dolphins. I just think that everything that's coming out of camp that you can read through a Patriots lens is very rose-colored. hopefully in the coming weeks, we can find somebody out there on the beat who can give us maybe at least a more balanced, more nuanced take on what they're seeing here when it comes from the Patriots. And then obviously always balanced and nuanced is the Buffalo Bills. Now, we've had a lot of conversation about everybody else here and how things are going. I want to bring up some of the things we didn't get a chance to hit on in the stock up, stock down report that we did for our live show this week. First of all, the fact that backup quarterback is even a topic. The Buffalo Bills need a backup quarterback. And I'm on record on this podcast saying, well, how many weeks ago, Chris, now? I don't know.
I was going to say you started it, and then I ended up clipping it for Instagram, and it had nearly 15,000 views. So
I'm pretty emphatic about the fact that Mitch Trubisky will not be the Bills' QB2. And now we're here in camp, and you're talking about battles of note and things that are getting storylines and things to be concerned about. The backup quarterback for the Buffalo Bills is about as wide open as it could get. And, to hear Joe Buscaglia write about it over at The Athletic, there's no one winning, quote unquote. But that almost seems like it's bad news for Mitch Trubisky, doesn't it?
yeah,
To spend this long with a football team and then not firmly be heads above your competition is bad. I'm on record as saying they were going to move on from him, mostly because Brandon Beane has a $2 million incentive to not want Mitch Trubisky around. If you look at the lack of involvement of Mitch Trubisky in the games where he was allowed to play, it was a lot of handoffs. Obviously, he has that giant pass to Terrell Shavers, which was mostly Terrell Shavers doing the work.
yes,
I mean, I think that pass traveled like 8 air yards.
yeah, that makes sense.
So maybe even less than that. It's the Matt Barkley situation where when a backup quarterback has had to come in and take a few reps in Josh Allen's stead, they have not trusted those individuals to throw the football at all. I don't know that it would be different under Mike White. It would just be cheaper to have that same thing. And the thing that I'm getting out of all the reports is that Mitch Trubisky's highs are higher, but his lows are also lower. And that might be the rub here. On one play, he goes long to Deion Kane, shows off his arm strength, throws his long, deep touchdown pass. And then on the very next play, comes out, throws across his body, which we all know is a no-no, for just a really ugly interception. And a part of me thinks maybe he's been hanging out with Josh Allen for too long. We all knew that kid growing up. Like the kid who wasn't good at stuff, but then hung around guys who were. And after a while, just because of proximity goes, you know what? I can do that. This guy can do that. I'll tell you what. I've hung out with guys, right, who could take a punch. I hung out with guys who could take a punch. And I remember the first time that someone, like when I was older, I was probably too old to be having this happen, where I was like, no, I'm fine. This is great. That guy can take a punch. I'm sure I can take one. And then you get rocked. And it becomes painfully apparent that you're out of your depth. You shouldn't have gone down there. This isn't a thing I should be doing at all. I feel like there's certain things Mitch Trubisky should just know by now as a quarterback in the NFL you can't do and shouldn't be doing. And yet he's still out there doing it in live action. And I feel like he's maybe emboldened because of the time he spent on task watching Josh Allen do the same thing. And it can almost become a problem. The same thing when you're a kid and you're riding bikes. Do you guys ever build ramps?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The kid who you build a ramp, and because you've got some chutzpah, you hit that thing with some speed and you get air. And maybe you're like, hey guys, there's this ditch. And I know this used to happen when I grew up out in the country. You'd say, hey, we're going to jump this ditch. And you'd go, okay, well, how far back can we move the ramp? But you went into it knowing that you were lighter than some of the other guys, or that, hey, I can pedal harder. Like I have better lower body strength, so I can generate more speed. So I'm confident taking this jump. And there was always going to be the one kid, after about 2-3 reps, was going to get cocky and try something that was out of his depth, get hurt, and then go cry to mom, and all of you were going to get yelled at. Like, that's the thing. Mitch Trubisky is out there doing it in real time at training camp. And that's problematic because Mike White's been a more consistent passer by all accounts. Touch, accuracy, decision-making in the pocket. His highs aren't as high, but his lows aren't nearly as low. And realistically, in a battle to see who gets to hold a clipboard, I think that's probably what matters besides the money, isn't it?
Yeah, you get some savings with cutting Trubisky and going with. I would trust Mike White more to throw the ball in a Josh Allen injury situation. Knock on wood.
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood.
You better knock
on wood. I think he's just he would be a better quarterback for what we're trying to do than Trubisky.
It's hard for someone like we if we're trying to give our team the same treatment as we just gave everybody else's team, it's hard because we come into this with the most complete roster in the AFC East. Maybe one of the, if you believe ESPN, the top 4 roster in the NFL. And it doesn't have a lot of warts. There aren't a lot of position battles that are going to get glitz and glam, and there's going to be people who are, writing 185 word tweets every 10, 15 minutes about, this is what's going on in that competition. That doesn't happen here. We don't have the same pressure for anybody to come out of camp, Chris, and I feel like as a winner in their respective position battle. And I feel like that also leads itself to, I don't know, people find other things to write about. We as fans who are not there analyzing practice the way like the guys at Cover One are, there's not as much for us to talk about. I mean, I've started listening to the press conferences now for the individual position coaches just to try to take some stuff away from that. And I did pick up some things of interest, storylines that I'm personally following now. And one of them was the idea that, remember how we were going to have a punt-a-palooza and I made fun of it?
Yes.
Said anybody who cares about this is an idiot. Well, they cut Jake Camarda before camp and went into camp with just one punter. So earlier this week, special teams coordinator Chris Tabor was asked, hey, that decision to go into camp with just the one punter instead of making it a true competition, what fueled that and what do you think that Brad Robbins has proved? And Tabor's response was, well, it was a numbers game, meaning they wanted to bring more guys in the 90-man roster at other positions, and it just didn't work. It didn't make sense to have 2 punters. And then went on to say Brad Robbins hasn't won anything. He hasn't won the job. His quote was, he's here for the moment. That's not a resounding, this is our guy. We believe in him.
Is somebody going to get cut at the end of... Is that how we got Bajorquez to be our punter? Wasn't he punting somewhere in the preseason or training camp? Somebody can fact check me if you're listening or watching this. But I believe that's how we got Bajorquez to punt for us.
It is entirely possible. In fact, you're saying it. I can see him in a Green Bay jersey, but I know that's where he left afterwards. I can't picture where he was before that. But again, something I was probably a handful of beers deep and railing on about after we talked about the punter competition and how stupid I thought it was. One of the other things that I said was that
September 2nd, 2018, Bajorquez claimed off waivers and then named the starting punter, and they released Colton Schmidt. I got that right.
They literally said, all right, we know what we have, and we've never seen this guy kick in a game before, but we know he's better than you.
Yeah, also, that was 2018 where you needed a punter to punt because Allen, we didn't know anything on Allen. That was Allen's first season. He came in at halftime in the Ravens game week 1 because Peterman stunk the joint up, and we needed a punter. Now we just need a punter that can, whoever the best holder is, because we don't need a punter to punt. We got Josh Allen in our offense can get it done. We just need the punter to hold.
Taking a look here, tracking the status available. There we go. So there's really not much available in terms of veteran free agent punters, and that's the interesting position the Bills are in. They're going to have to wait for cutdown day. And like, if I just look, NFL punters by team. Chris, you want to go ahead and give that a Goog for me so it's up there on the TV? There's a number of teams that I'm willing to bet are having their own competition right now. If what I'm hearing right now is that there's like, hey, we don't love this guy. He's the guy who's here for the moment. On one hand, that could be a coach just kind of, he's trying to say something so as to give his guy a little wiggle room. He might also be telling us the truth. I mean, there's some coaches, position coaches and people who are just like that. So it's entirely possible that if that sentiment continues, we could just see that again here in 2024 or 2025, where the Buffalo Bills say, hey, we need a guy for training camp. And when all's said and done, I'm looking at the guys who are available right now in the market. And there's, three? Pat O'Donnell, Mike Pilardi, and Jack Browning, who are all either old or have never had NFL experience.
According to AI Google, Michael Dixon and Brian Anger are veteran punters that are getting challenged this year at camp.
So it's entirely possible that none of this matters. None of the discourse about punters matters because punters don't matter. They just don't. Even if Nate Geary did hold a snap really well. And I guess that's the other thing. Like, if you want to talk about storylines that I'm into, let's talk about that, Chris. We'll end with this. And for those of you watching on YouTube, Chris is going to be a peach and stitch the video of Nate finally owning, basically cashing the check that his big mouth wrote and taking a snap from Bills long snapper Reed Ferguson at training camp.
What are we supposed to do as a podcast now? We've rode that for 3 years.
What other bits? What do we have left in the bag? Guys, it happened. For those of you who aren't active on social media, we've spent 3 years antagonizing Nate about his claim that he could hold an NFL long snap. And he finally made good on that this past weekend at Bills training camp. Joe Marino from the Locked On Bills podcast was kind enough to record it for us. Anthony Prohaska was there to witness.
In the background.
And I got to give it to him.
They all signed a legal waiver claiming that it actually happened. And it wasn't AI generated.
And if you look at if you watch the video, he's what, 8 yards, 9 yards?
Yeah, something like that.
The depth is about 8-9 yards, which is what you'd expect from a long snap. And I got to give it to Nate. He nailed it. He nails it, catches it clean, laces are out, and then he has like the most expert, just arrogant, spin of the ball on the ground as he walks off. It's cinema.
There you go.
It's just absolute cinema. All right, so it's about 7 yards.
He didn't even need to give the look back, and he gave the look back like there was an actual kicker there.
Guys, for those of you who are watching the show on YouTube, you're going to get a real treat. You can see the video again in real time. It's just, I could Zapruder film this thing all day, but kudos to Nate. Nate, I'll raise a high life to you. Good for you for owning it, and not just owning it, but then, like, I figured he would show up and take his licks, and instead he showed up and proved that maybe anybody can really hold a snap, which almost makes what Bajorquez was doing here, like, it almost makes you question that more, doesn't it?
Yeah. I actually DM'd Anthony Prohaska. I should pull it up, but I had asked Prohaska because we've been trying to get, dial in a date to get Prohaska back in here before the season begins. But I did ask him what how he rates the snap to placement. He said the first one was 9.5, which is probably what we just saw. And they did a second one, and Nate, I guess, had a double catch, and he rated it a 7.5.
See, and this is the thing, guys. Anybody can do something once. Can you do it over and over and over and over again? Like, although I can't hit a free throw to save my life.
That was my go-to for horse. We play horse for the city of Alpharetta in the gym. If you scorekeeping basketball, like when I would scorekeep Reed's game, you get to the Crabapple Government Center, and maybe one of my bosses is there, and then you challenge him to horse, and your only throw is a free throw, and you call swish every time. I could usually, if you gave me 10 free throws, I might be able to get either somewhere between around 50% swish. I was real good at shooting free throws. The only reason I was never good at playing basketball was the running.
That's like me saying that the only reason I couldn't do monkey bars as a kid was because of all that gravity. All that damn gravity pulling me down. Chris,
I would assume monkey bars, your arms are so long, like you would grab the bars and then you would your feet would already be on the ground. There's nothing. You'd have to do pull-ups to use the monkey bars.
It's very funny to me seeing Nate succeed. Good for him. Listen, Nate, I give you a lot of credit for having the balls to go out there. Now, to your first, answer your question. We will have to find a new bit. But I'm sure, given the hyperbolic nature of Nate Geary, we will find one. And with that said, free throws, I learned how to do them, if only because it was the only way you could get on the court and pick up basketball games at the gym. Like, you just shot. And it was like, okay, the first 5 guys to make it are in. You know, you just shoot, and once we have 5-on-5, we play half court, and then we play to 10 or 11 or whatever it was, and then we shoot, and whoever makes it, and if you don't make it, you sit out and you wait. But I famously went to a party, like a party at a friend's house outside of the village of Williamsville. He lived walking distance from a park, and they thought it would be fun for the whole party to walk down to the park and do a free throw competition. My wife was like, everyone did 10. My wife was like 4 for 10. Some people went like 7 for 10. A lot of his friends play like pickup basketball with him at this church league that they play in. His mother, who is 66 years old, went 3 for 10 shooting granny style. Chris, what do you think I shot?
6 of 10.
I warned them in advance that this was a bad idea. I went 0 for 19. And I was like, guys, we could be out here all night. We could do this all night. I might not hit that thing. I can't put arc on my shot. It's like I'm throwing a shot put. It just goes straight back and off the backboard. I have no touch. I have no finesse. Nothing I ever did about sports involved finesse. It was just manhandling people and playing. Like, if you could get your hands into a person, that's the sport that I was familiar with growing up.
Soft hands.
Just like basketball. You're like, okay, I can't play football anymore because that's over. Let's go play basketball. And what I do in basketball, the only thing I did of note was just when you set a pick, Chris, it was diabolical. You'd set a hard pick that's basically a foul, but you can't get called for it.
You probably set picks with your elbows.
Yeah, elbows out. It was hilarious. I found a way to turn basketball kind of into football, and fouled out of. I famously finished a season scoring 2 points, but fouling out of most games.
That checks out.
So I think one of our best storylines for the Buffalo Bills so far through 1 week has already been answered. Nate Geary, God bless him. Now I got to find new ones. You know, Bobby Babich has talked this week about some opinions about Dorian Strong and some of the other players that are out there who are now getting shine because of our health issues. And I don't know. I think that we should start really looking to see some things over the second week of practice from these young players, because Bobby Babich did kind of pull back the curtain a little bit on what their philosophy is going to be and has been. He's like, we have a plan in place for each player and their development. But he said they prefer to load a rookie's plate early and throw them right into the fire and then watch where they struggle and adapt their learning plan to what their strengths and weaknesses are once they've been just chucked right into the action. That has its pros and cons. But if you're a team that's already established and you're already a contender, Chris, I'd argue that it might be the best way to do it. Find out who you can rely on and who can swim. And then the guys who can maybe doggy paddle, you go, okay, let's start. Now what do I have to work on with this guy to maybe make him a workable starter come week 7 when I might need a Dorian Strong? It's going to be interesting, and I think this is going to be a big week or two for all of the rookies, because now that they've got their feet wet, they're really going to start seeing more action. And then because Chris, when the preseason starts, there's not a starter seeing the football field.
Better not.
For more than a series, if at all.
Yeah.
So those kids are going to be in there against guys who aren't their teammates. And this staff has to be confident in them, and they're going to coach them up for that. I think now that the pads are on, they're getting into more physicality, you're really going to see stuff ramp up, and that's where watching these rookies is going to be a lot of fun. With that said, we've blathered on enough. We got to get the hell out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger, and this has been your AFC East Roundup.